If you've ever wanted something and then you got it, but felt unfulfilled, empty, not happy, this episode is going to be for you. I heard a quote the other day and I said, money. That is exactly what it's all about. And the quote was, happiness is the way, not the destination. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about the importance of understanding where you're at right now and being happy with it, and then how to actually do that. Because I think there's a lot of things out there that tell you this is what you should do. You should just be happy. You should just be happy with what you have right now, today, no matter what. But there's not a lot of things out there that talk to you about how. Hi, and thank you for joining the Melissa Culleton Show. I'm so glad you're here. I would really love it if you could subscribe and like this video or like this podcast, however you're joining me today, because that's how the word gets out. And I'm on a mission to make people understand how to find your purpose, knowing that it's really easy, and understanding the importance of fulfillment in life being basically everything when it comes to being happy. I'm a purpose coach. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to dive into today's conversation. So I wanted to talk about this topic today, and the reason it hit me to want to talk about this is what I said earlier about this quote I heard on a podcast, and the podcast hosts were talking about how their shaman shared this quote with them, and when it hit me hard. And it hit me hard because I think so many of us have the situation where we're always wanting something that's next, whether it's something big like the next house we want to buy, the next big car we want to buy, the next big vacation we want to go on, or if it's something kind of silly and small, like you're just wishing for the next season to come along. Because Lord knows we all get sick of winter. I am recording this in winter, so I can say that wholeheartedly. I am definitely wishing for spring right now, being that it's end of January. So it's this concept, and the quote was, happy is the way, not the destination. And I think this is really, really an important quote because we do indeed spend a lot of time wishing and hoping for the next thing so that we can just get through where we're at. And there's something in our mind, whether we say it exactly as that, whether we say exactly like, oh, I'll be happy when fill in the blank. Sometimes we do consciously say it, but most of the time it's more of an unconscious thought, more of an unconscious feeling, more of an unconscious way of being. So, a really good example of this is I have heard people talk about when they're pregnant and they get toward the end of their pregnancy, what do they want the most out of anything, right? They just want to have this baby. They want that baby to get to this earth so that they can see the baby, they can stop feeling uncomfortable, they can stop having the back pain and all the other pains that come with it because, pregnancy can be hard and there's a lot of things that happen during pregnancy, especially toward the end. And so they're wishing for that next stage of the baby coming. Then what happens? The baby arrives. Now we're wishing our way out of that moment because we're exhausted, right? Because the baby stays up all night and you're taking care of the baby and you're utterly exhausted. So you're just trying to get through to that next moment of maybe the baby will sleep through the night. And I'm hyper aware that this is something that's a difficult thing to accomplish, honestly. And that's obvious that it's difficult to accomplish, being happy with where you're at and not always wishing for the next moment or the next thing or the next promotion or the next relationship in order to finally feel a certain way. I'm hyper aware that that is difficult. And we know it's difficult because we see tons of depression, right? We know it's difficult because we see tons of anxiety. And anxiety is just sort of waiting and wishing for the next moment, that future state of being, that future state of having. And what I want to talk about, what I want to think about when it comes to this is more of a how to, because there's no secret out there that we should be happy. I mean, happiness feels good. Happiness is probably the more welcomed feeling in the world versus other feelings, right? And so there's no shortage of understanding the importance of being happy. There's no shortage of the amount of information out there telling you how to be happy or why you should be happy. But I do think there's a little bit of shortage on the how to. And even the how to's can be a little Pollyanna or a little esoteric or a little, okay, easy for you to say kind of attitude toward it, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about the how to. And when we talk about the how to, I think it's really important to understand that you're not just going to flip a switch and it's going to be good. You're not going to just say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I heard you, Melissa. That works. No problem. I'm going to go be that way. I'm going to go do that thing." And then you wake up the next day and boom, you're happy. And the reason I want to point that out is because it's so important to understand our natural tendencies. And if we don't understand our natural tendencies, then we will absolutely stay in this place of misery and not happiness. We will always stay in this place of, what about the next thing? What about the next relationship? What about the next promotion? If I only had X amount of dollars in my bank account. So if we don't understand the concept that you can't just hear a podcast or read a book or talk to somebody and then you flip a switch and it's done. Actually, the direct opposite. What we need to understand is that this is an intention. This is work. This is training your brain. And if we don't remember those things, then we're going to get disappointed really quickly, because then we're going to say, well, I heard that podcast. I understood what she was saying. I'm trying to do the thing and it's not working, so I give up. Now we're back into unhappiness mode, waiting again yet for the next thing. Well, maybe someday I'll learn how to have gratitude and therefore I'll be happier. So we need to understand the need for intentionality when it comes to dealing with these kind of things that are really big topics that are heavy, like being happy. And the reason I bring that up and the reason I want to talk about that is because too many of us just sort of have these expectations of ourselves and others. The expectation is we'll just be happy, right? And if we don't understand the fact that our mind is a very trainable resource, but it has to be trained. It has to be trained to look for the good. It has to be trained to have a level of appreciation and gratitude. And if it's not trained, it's left to its own devices, and its own devices is naturally on high alert, because one of its foundational jobs in our life, in our world, as humans and other animals for that matter, is safety and staying alive. So even if we don't have a situation like we used to bajillions of years ago, where we were out in the middle of nowhere and the only thing protecting us were some trees and maybe some bushes and maybe a tent that we made, where random animals, wild animals could get to us. Even if we don't have that situation right now, our brain's not evolved enough to not understand that. It's very primal. It's very old, And so its job is to constantly scan where there's a problem, where there might be a problem, and to protect ourselves from that, to protect us from that. It's got a lot of other jobs, but that's one of its primary jobs. And if we don't wrap our head around that, then we don't realize how much more control we need to have over it in order for it to not necessarily get in the way of our happiness, because it is always going to say, that's not good enough. That's not pretty enough. That's not thin enough. because it has an idea that things have to be just so in order to fit in, and fitting in means survival. Everything comes back to the whole survival thing. And so we have to really understand this concept before we even talk about happiness, because if we don't understand that topic, then we will absolutely get in this bad zone of thinking we can just listen to a podcast or just read a book or just take a quiz or just hire a coach or just go to therapy and bibbity bobbity boop, we're going to be happy. We're not. Unfortunately, that's the news of today. We're not. And so we have to really understand the concept of the mind. And you don't need to be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a neurologist, a brain expert. You don't have to be any of those things. You just have to know this basic concept that the brain's job is to keep you safe, and therefore its natural tendency is toward the negative. And so you have to take this very proactive approach, a very intentional approach, in order for you to even remotely feel satisfied or happy. That's it. And so going back to the initial quote in the beginning of this video, happiness is the way, not the destination. That's going to be a practice. You have to practice this. You have to have intentionality behind it, because if you don't, then you're going to just let the mind do its thing, and its thing is survival, 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 survival. What's going to kill me today? What's a change in my schedule? What's a change in my routine? What's a change out in the world? And if you don't understand that basic concept, the happiness part gets really difficult. And you can actually get almost pulled down into the world of the brain. And that's where I talk about having more of a brain-led or mind-led life versus a soul-led life. So let's get to the how-to, because I think this is going to be really helpful. And how do we get to a place where we're sort of bathing in this concept of happiness being the way and not the destination? And what I have learned for the last 5 years, and the work that I've done in the last 5 years, and coaching certifications and trainings and tons and tons and tons of conversations with people, one of the core concepts of understanding how to do this is understanding what makes you up. And what makes you up is your higher self, your soul, your mind, and your body. And I almost like to look at this like an org chart for those of you who are like real literal, real corporate-y, or run a business or have that idea of org charts in your head. Because if you don't understand that the higher self is like the queen, the CEO, the mom, the dad, basically the highest of the highest in your world, then it makes you feel like you have no control over any of those other three things: mind, body, soul. So it's really important to understand that in order to embody this concept of happiness is the way, not the destination, first and foremost, understanding that there's somebody here in charge, and it's you. It's not your mom. It's not your dad. It's not your boss. It's not the random people you run into that piss you off during the day. It's not your coworkers. It's not who's in charge of the country. It's not some idol that you have in your life, like some sort of sports player or musician or something. The reality is that you are in charge of your life. You have this massive, endless power to you. And I call that your higher self. Lots of other people do as well. It's not a concept that's new, but it's a concept that maybe some people don't even think about because they don't get introduced to, or they think it's too esoteric or Pollyanna. And I think what I bring to the table here is that I'm a very practical person. I've worked in corporate for 15 years. I believe in a lot of airy-fairy stuff, but I also believe in practicality and applicability. Because if we're not taking this information and making it more applicable, then it does feel a little out of reach, and it does feel a little esoteric, fa la 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 land in the clouds. And so I like to bring it back down to earth, but generally speaking, this concept of understanding that there is a higher self to you that has all the control, all the power, all the decision making is a really, really critical piece to embodying this concept of happiness is a way, not the destination. So just know that there is something of you that gets to sit above it all, sit on the roof, if you will, and see it all down below you. See the people, see your body, see your soul, see your mind, see your colleagues, see all the people out in the universe, see it all below you. And I don't mean that from a people are below you, like you're better than everybody. More so, just you're up on a perch and you can kind of just see it all happening. And knowing that that person is very much the decision maker. That person is very much the person in charge who gets to call the shots, who gets to be the mom of the house, who gets to be the dad of the house, who gets to be the CEO, who gets to be the president, who gets to be the king, who gets to be the queen, whatever resonates with you, imagine yourself as that. Okay? So that's number 1. That's the big thing. That's like understanding there's someone in charge of mind, body, soul, and everything outside of you. Because if you can grasp that concept, then you'll understand that you have leverage, you have decision making capabilities, you have the ability to be in charge of your life. And not to say that this is going to control everything. That's not what I'm saying. This is more so just you understand there's a part of you that sits on the top, sees it all happening. You know, the only thing you control is mind, body, soul. Everything outside of you can't control it. But a concept or an understanding that you have the ability to see it all, take in all the information, take in all the facts, and then make decisions from there. So that's number 1. Number 2, to this concept of understanding that happiness is the way and not the destination, is that you have a mind, a body, and a soul. And your higher self is in charge of those guys. And if your higher self is in charge of those guys, then you are going to see from a distance the way they act. And your job at your higher self is to lead with whatever the soul wants and connect with whatever the soul wants. And so understanding that is critical because if the soul is taken care of, then happiness in any given moment is a lot easier because you're not reaching for the outside world all the time. You're reaching internally. You're going inward, not outward. And so it's really important to understand that if you want happiness now and you want happiness today and not some future state of yourself, that you have the higher power that oversees the mind, body, soul. And one of the critical pieces of the higher power or the higher self to do is to have a very good connectivity or connection with the soul so that the higher self can really connect with whatever the soul wants. And then the other guys, the mind and the body, are there to execute on those things. And the reason these concepts matter in happiness is because when and if the mind gets out of control and starts telling you all the negative things and wants to bring you down because it wants to keep you safe, because you're trying to change something and it doesn't want to change something, or it's worried it's not going to have any money, it's worried not going to have a relationship, it's worried it's not going to have kids, and all those things are all very like, let me fit in and therefore let me survive. And so if you don't understand these concepts, then the happiness part gets really difficult. But if you understand these concepts and you understand that your higher self's job is to connect with your soul, and then your mind and your body are there to execute on what the soul wants, life just sort of clicks. It's like a Lego just clicking together. Clicking together. So that's the kind of second part of all of this, is that there's a mind, body, soul component to this that the higher self needs to oversee. And when everybody's reacting and going crazy, especially the mind, then the higher self can understand that recognize it, and then take control of the situation. So think about it like this. If you're a mom and you have three children, and on any given day, you wake up and Susie's crying because she wet her bed. So now you have to deal with Susie. Meanwhile, Sam and Sally are running amok in the background, and you're trying to get them ready for school, but you're also trying to change the bed sheets and get Sally settled down to stop crying. And so at any given moment, you're going to be dealing with three children, mind, body, soul. And it's your job to sort of take care of kind of whoever's the most intense at the moment. And in this moment, let's just say Sally was the soul. In this moment, Sally doesn't need just her bed sheets changed. Sally needs to be consoled because she's upset and embarrassed. And so you have to recognize that. And meanwhile, mind and body, or the rest of the kids, are doing their thing, and they may not be doing something perfect, but at least they're kind of content, and they're in the background a little bit. But your job is to focus on the child that needs your help. And so this concept can be used also in a workplace. Like another example is there's the higher self. And so let's just say you're a manager, and let's just say you have three employees. And on any given day, those three employees might need different things. One day, you might not even hear from the employee, one of them, number one, number two, number three. But number one might be doing their thing and not even hear from them. Number two might be like sending emails like a maniac to everybody, and you have to call them up and be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you sending crazy emails? Or number three might be, in the break room talking bad about somebody else. So it's your job as the manager to control all those guys as much as you can. And I don't mean control like make them do what you want, obviously, but it's more like paying attention to them, understanding where they're at, getting to the bottom of what the problem is, and then fixing it. And so your higher self's job, it can be tough sometimes, because any given day, mind, body, soul, at any given day, one of them or all three of them could be freaking out, right? So I'll give you an example. Soul speaks through emotions. So a more specific analogy, not really analogy, but more specific example of this is you're sad that day. That's your soul. Your mind is racing, constantly talking about and thinking about that meeting you've got to go to and present at, and the mind is worried you're going to screw it all up. What if you pee your pants in the middle of the meeting? Like something, it goes to these extremes, right? What if you pass out? What if you get so nervous you pass out in the middle of the meeting? Get her in the middle of the presentation. And then your body has stomach aches and your stomach's upset and you feel like you're going to get sick to your stomach. So that is your then cue, because they're all freaking out, to tend to them. And if you don't recognize your ability to do that and your job in that, then those things are just sort of left at whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you're not paying any attention. You're just trying to get through it. It's not going to be the best result that it could be if you said, hey, soul, what's going on? Talk to me. I know I can feel you're sad. I can feel you're nervous. It's going to be all right. I'm here for you. I'll be there every step of the way. And even if you screw up, I still love you. And then you talk to your body. Okay, body, I can feel that you're really nervous. Just know that I'm here for you. We're going to take care of you. Let's get you some water. Let's get you some ways of calming down. Maybe we listen to some good music, or we bounce around a little bit before I have to give a presentation. And then of course, the mind, you have to just say, I hear you, buddy. I hear you that you're nervous for this situation because it's new. We're going to be in front of people. We're going to be presenting, and there's a chance I screwed up. But I need you to focus on executing on the presentation only. So you're literally having to like proactively deal with these guys. And I know that makes you sound like you might have multiple personalities or something. That's okay. You don't have to do this in front of people, right? It's just your own world you're in. You don't have to do this in front of people. You don't have to look crazy or sound crazy, but it's really important for you to understand the amount of effort it takes to get everybody moving in the right direction, rowing in the right direction, as you will, and that you have a higher self that does that job, just like a CEO would, or a manager would, or a mom would, or a dad would, or a queen would, or a king would. Yeah? So you have to understand that there's this part of you that sits at the top that is in charge of the rest of the guys. And so if you can't do these things and you don't understand the different components that make up you and the role of each one of them, it can be very difficult to settle into this place of understanding that happiness is where you're at. There's not going to be some magic thing that comes along. I think it's you know, one of the Hollywood stars that I'm literally losing his mind name right now, but he always says like, I wish everybody became rich and famous, and I wish everybody became rich and famous and got everything they ever wanted, and they'll see that that's actually not the thing that makes you happy. So it's a thing, right? I mean, we see it all the time. I mean, some of the most famous people in the world that we thought were happy, like Robin Williams, ended up ending his own life. So it's obvious to me that you can always wish for the next big thing or even the next little thing. Sure, having goals is great. Having objectives is great. Having things that you want to do in life is great. But if you're relying on those things and those happenings and those events and those people coming into your life to make you happy, they're not going to. And that's the point. The point is the only thing that will allow you to have happiness be the way and not the destination is this understanding that there's nothing external that's going to create that. It's just not. It's just not. And I'll give you an example from my own life. One of the best years of my life in terms of success goes was back like, I think like 2014, 15-ish, somewhere in that vicinity. It was one of my first full years as a 100% outside sales rep for a pretty large company, and I sold over $200 million that year. And I distinctly remember come January where we had our sales meeting, and we went to the sales meeting and I got an award for being one of the top sales reps in the company. I felt empty. I just felt empty. I don't even know how to explain it other than explaining it that way. I felt empty. And then to top it off and put a cherry on top of it, after all those contracts got signed and I got my bonuses from them, I felt guilty. I felt like I didn't deserve that money. I felt bad that I had money that other people didn't. So you can see where if you're not right with yourself and you don't understand this concept of being happy, being the way and not the destination, there's a lot of crap that you can get in life. There's a lot of achievements that you can get in life. There's a lot of material possessions that you can have in life. There's a lot of relationships that you can have in life. But those are never, ever going to be what makes you happy. They're just not. Are they things that supplement your life and augment your life? And are they fun to reach for and fun to achieve? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But if you don't have this like real strong internal foundation of understanding your role in the world, of your higher self, having mind, body, and soul, it's going to be really difficult to get there from a happiness standpoint. And just knowing that the fun part of actually having those objectives is the process of getting there. You know, like my husband's done a lot of races in his life, like big Ironmans and stuff. And if he didn't enjoy the process of getting to race day, he would be really miserable, right? So if he was just waiting for race day to see what his results were going to be, and if his results weren't as good as he wanted them to be, and he was sad and depressed afterwards, what would it all be for, right? So it's the process. If you can't fall in love with that process, then you find yourself really unhappy. You know, like if you're trying to find your soulmate, if you're not enjoying the process of going out with different people and meeting different people and going to different restaurants and checking out different dates and doing different stuff together, then you're just going to wait and wait and wait for that person to come along to try to make you happy. And when you don't find that, or you don't feel that, or you finally find the one and y'all end up getting married and having whatever, And then there's challenges in your relationship. You're like, wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to make me happy. You'll be disappointed, right? So it's just this really strong understanding that happiness is something that ultimately you choose. That's probably my third thing. I would say that's my third thing. The first thing is understanding your job as your higher self. The second thing is understanding you've got to manage mind, body, and soul throughout the entire process, always, always, every day, every single day. Your job as a person is be your higher self, manage your mind, body, and soul, see what everybody needs, figure it out, and execute accordingly. And then, and the fourth thing that will help with all of this is just simple gratitude. And I know this is something that everybody talks about. There's journals on gratitude, and you should gratitude journal every day. And I honestly, I think it's a little overdone, which is unfortunate because I think that it is really important. But I think it's a little overdone and it's a little oversaid. And I think that we always try to like take these things and these concepts that are pretty basic and create something out of them in our little capitalistic world, right? So I have to capitalize on the fact that gratitude is just a simple thing to do every single day. I'm going to make a journal out of it, which is great, by the way. And if you journal, you keep a gratitude journal. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. However, when we use things like that and we turn them into more of a thing than they need to be, then I think it becomes one of those, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that, or I'm overcomplicating that, or I don't like to journal every day. So then there's like a reason to not do it. So my thing about it is let's not overcomplicate this, right? So let's not overcomplicate this. What I would say that's really helpful and important to any of this stuff is to not overcomplicate it. And so if gratitude is our number four, then we can think about this as just super simple. Super simple. I'll give you an example. We've been without a dishwasher for several weeks now, and we're not getting a new one till I think next week. And so we've had to hand wash everything lately, which, ooh, woe is me, right? It's fine. But it really made me appreciate my dishwasher, you know? And I think the simple thing is just to say, I can't wait till I have a dishwasher again. And I really appreciate having a dishwasher. I appreciate having a stove. I appreciate having running water. And you just kind of say it in your own head really quickly and not make a big deal out of it. You know, if you can just kind of consciously bring these thoughts forward, they're really helpful. So that's the conversation today, guys. And I hope it has helped. And I think it's really important to understand that there's not going to be this time and day and place with the certain people in your life that you wish for where you're all of a sudden just happy as a pig and poo, as they say. It's just not a thing. And you have to choose it. And you have to look at your life. And on any given day, no matter what your bank account says, no matter who's in your life, no matter what terrible thing has just happened, and understand that you're going to be okay. And the only way you're going to be okay is having a true understanding of what your higher self's power is, what your higher self's job is, understand that you have a mind, body, soul to manage, understand the importance of gratitude. Because if you don't understand those things, the wind will blow the wrong way and it'll probably knock you over. And so to have this really, really strong foundation that you can always come back to and always know that there's this higher self out there that's within you that can really manage your life. And that allows you to have this access to something that gives you the power over external circumstances, basically. Doesn't mean those things aren't going to happen. Doesn't mean you're not going to feel like crap about them. Obviously, really tough things happen in people's lives. Really, really bad. People get fired, people get sick, people lose loved ones. I mean, tough things happen in life, guys. So I'm not disregarding that. But what I am saying is that even if those things happen to you in your life, yes, you're going to feel terrible, but you have an ability and you have access to this higher self that understands what each person's going to need in that moment. And that person, that higher self can deliver those things that those guys need in life so that you can kind of come back to this core foundation in your life and you'll be okay. Like, no matter what happens, you'll be okay. No matter what happens, you can be happy. So, because if we're not happy in life, what else is there? But just know, on my parting words, that if you're looking for happiness, just know it's not anything external. There's not going to be this moment that you get something and then all of a sudden you're happy. It's going to be about just choosing the happiness on a daily basis, being really grateful for what you have today, and the rest usually just falls in place. All right, well, take care till next time. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.